Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTube. This is Tony, Kilo 4 Sierra Delta Victor, K4STV. And today we're going to take a look at a product from A to Z Tech. And what this is, in this package, I have two of them. They are Crowbar Circuits. Now, this is a Crowbar PCB. You can get it from me for just $10, and that includes shipping and handling in the U.S. But it's really simple. On the PCB, you're just adding an SCR, a capacitor, a resistor, and a Zener diode, and you place this in your power supply. Negative to negative, positive to positive, and this positive goes to your voltmeter if you have one. If you don't have one, you wouldn't connect it. These are standalone. And what I mean by standalone is, well, you don't have to open your power supply. You just build it and connect it to your power block, power strip with power poles, and it's the same thing. A little bit more money. You're gonna have to build as a kit. I know for a fact he offers them pre-built, but let me explain to you simply what a crowbar circuit is, and I'm going to try to be as simple in my terms as possible. It is a device that goes in between these, at least go in between your power supply and your radio or any other piece of equipment. And when the DC voltage exceeds its selected value, for example, 13.8 volts is what most of our ham gear runs off of. So if it exceeds 16 volts, it basically acts as a circuit breaker to prevent your equipment from being damaged by overvoltage. This board, whatever your Zener diode is, 15 volts, 16 volts, 17 volts, once that voltage is exceeded, this throws it back to ground. Now, some people say, well, Tony, if it throws it back to ground, won't it destroy the power supply? Guess what? If your power supply overvolted, you already have problems. You already need a repair. You can't break more, per se, what's already broken. It's like getting a flat tire and stopping your vehicle in the middle of a highway because you have a flat tire. Pull the vehicle over to the side of the road. The tire is already flat. You're not going to damage the rim. Pretty much the same thing. Goes into over voltage, it saves your equipment, throws the power supply back to ground because it's already in need of repair. So it doesn't destroy your radio equipment. These two kits, we're going to put them together. And I'm already going to say that I wish I would have thought of this first. But it incorporates fuses, and if your power supply goes to crap, it doesn't destroy your radios. So stay tuned, we'll flip the camera around and we'll do an unpackaging because it's not in a box, and take a look at what we have and what we're going to need to assemble it. Then we're going to assemble it. And I will also put a link for A to Z Tech in the description. This is a fantastic idea, especially if you're a new ham, you're just getting into soldering, and you're afraid to open up your power supply and insert this. This is a great option right here. So stay tuned. We're going to come back to it. We're going to open up the packages, pull out, because there's two different types. There's a full kit and a not full kit. I believe one has an enclosure, the other one doesn't, and we're going to put those together. So stay tuned. This is Kilo 4 Sierra Delta Victor. Be right back. CQ, Kilo 4 Sierra Delta Victor, Kilo 4, Sheriff's Deputy, Vance County, QRZ. Welcome to QSO. What a cop. Alright, we got our packages. Some people completely freak out and they black out their addresses and stuff. Hey, if you know what my call sign is, you know where I live. So, no big deal. If you want to come to visit me to hang out, that's fine. If you want to come to visit me and bring some Bravo Sierra with you, I'm going to take care of it. Just letting you know. But this feels like the big package. This feels like the little one. So let's open up the little one. Let's see exactly what we got going on here. We'll cut open the big one too. That way we don't have to come back and do this again. But okay, alright, big one, little one. So let's open up the little one and see what we got going on here. Quantity 1. I can't remember what I paid for this. This is the smaller of the two. This is the Minibar 15-16 basic kit. And it says basic, so it's basic. Thank you for purchasing the Minibar 15-16 basic kit. Support at A to Z Tech, Spring Hill, Kansas. Anti-static bag. Okay. My fat fingers can't get in there. Okay. Alright, this is our basic kit. Pretty basic, just a PCB. Alright. So, we're going to stick that back in. We're probably not going to build this one today because obviously we're going to need some extras to build it. I'll put that over there. Get this out of the way. Just make sure there's nothing else in there new. Nothing else in there. Alright, so let's go to the full kit. We looked at the basic, now let's look at the full. Let's see, 15-16 full kit. Obviously full kit got more goodies, right? Because this is what we need to completely build this out. Now you will need some other stuff. Scan and download the user manual. That's what's on that card. And we have a board. Looks like we have some Lexon or Lucite. We have some power poles. Okay. Alright. So, aside from the power poles, let's see what we got in here. Alright, a header, a jumper. And a fuse holder. Okay. Alright. So this is going to be something standalone, and it looks like we're going to have to just do some simple soldering. Power poles are together, and this is the block where we're going to insert our fuse, and then we have this jumper. So stand by. I'm going to look at the manual. Of course, we have these nice Lucite pieces right here, and I can tell that that's gonna go in there. So let me decipher the instructions real quick and we'll come right back. Alright, now we're back. For those that are familiar with me and my style of soldering, I use high heat. So I'm going to start with this header. Notice short pins on bottom, long pins on top. Short pins on bottom are going to go in there. I'm not going to use a helping hands. I'm using a silicone soldering pad. You could pick one up off of eBay or Amazon. They're fairly cheap. They might come with a grounding strap. So we're going to be at 750 degrees on this iron. We're just going to pretend it just a little bit. We're going to run a little bit of flux to this. With a Kester flux pen. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with the center one. Just get some solder flowing onto it. Just so we can get it secured. Okay. Alright. That looks kind of straight. Alright, we are straight. Okay. So that's just to hold that in place, and there's some more solder there, and we're going to lay some solder here. Okay. Alright. She's in there, she's straight. That's a wrap. Now, what I do like about this is at this point you can't mess this up, because these are the same. So it doesn't matter which side you put it, it's going to be right. And that's what I like. He put some thought into this. Like, you cannot really monkey this up. You really can't. I'm sure you could if you absolutely tried, but you'd have to try awfully hard. So these against the solder pad. And the reason I'm using 750 is because it's a very high temperature, and when you're dealing with PCBs, delicate parts, you know, the faster you get your solder in there to make that solder joint under that high heat, the less likely you are to cause any damage, believe it or not. So that's about centered. We're gonna put the top back on the solder. Man, this is a fast build. Now, there are some limitations with this, and we'll talk about those limitations in a minute. But for most operators, if you're operating portable, it's going to be minor. Now, he says to use a chisel tip. This isn't a chisel tip, and I don't necessarily need a chisel tip. Get that lined up. Get this in here. But I see why, because that broader tip, you're going to transfer more heat, but this tip is going to transfer heat just fine for what we need. And that's why we applied some flux to help the solder flow as good as possible so that we don't have cold solder joints. And I'm going to shift that just a little bit right there. Trying to get it in the middle. Doesn't necessarily have to be in the middle, but that's where I wanted to try to get it to. Yeah, I'm not sure if you can see that big bead of solder, but eventually you will see it just starting to flow, and it'll like puddle out when the temperature is right. And that's one reason we use flux. Here we go. I'm just applying it, and we're just letting it flow. Now I'm alternating side to side because I don't want to heat one side more than the other. Here's the test, pick it up. Yeah, it's not coming apart. So now we're gonna flip it. I'm just gonna come over here to this side. Apply heat to both the trace and to our power pole. And we've been on here a couple of seconds. We're fairly flat. I just didn't feel like changing out solder tips. And you know, as you get more experience with soldering, you realize that, hey, sometimes you can get by without having to resort to switching up tips and stuff. You know, it's just going to be based on experience. Now, I'm not the greatest solder guy in the world, but I don't leave any cold solder joints. And I kind of know what I'm doing. You really don't want to throw too much heat into the PCB board because you don't want to melt anything or mess anything up. But as I just move that slowly around, yeah, that's not going to be a cold joint. That's going to be a good joint. Alright, and then I'm going to flip it over, and we're going to come back to this side, and we're going to do the same thing. Just apply, because we got flux on it. Apply high heat to that side. A couple of seconds on that side, and a couple of seconds here. It says it's at 750, so we're just going to let it roll off the tip. And bam. Oh man, she's flowing good. Get some good solder flow going. I'm gonna come down, come over to this side, apply some heat. I'm just gonna go all around. Okay, that's done. Those Andersons aren't going anywhere now. If you want to be a little prima donna-ish, this is 99% alcohol. Used for cleaning electronics. Now, tester is a no clean flux, so you really don't have to clean it, but if you want to, you can. And this is 4 Pro Professional Collection 99% isopropyl, so that's what we're going to use. And you should really use a lint-free. I'm sorry if I'm getting too far away from the microphone, but a lint-free cloth like a microfiber, and just spray it. and that cleans up your flux. And if you want, you can just spray the cloth. Come in here and it evaporates really quick because it's just alcohol. There's really no water in this. Alright, you can clean that area up. And the reason for using the microfiber, it's lint free, so you're not leaving lint behind. The jumper is supposed to go on the first two here. So, alright, we took care of that. Now our fuse holder. So the fuse holder is kind of two low pins, and this sits a little bit higher. So relative to the board, that just clicks in there. And again, I'm just gonna apply a little bit of flux. I'm just gonna dab it. Now this solder does have flux, but I like using the Kester because it flows so well. And I'm just gonna come in here. I'm just gonna touch there onto the pad, and I'm just gonna apply the solder to the pad, a little bit to the iron, and I'm just gonna pull it away. There we go. All right, and then we're gonna come back over to the next one, and a little bit of solder. And when the temperature's right, it will flow like it should. And there you go. It just connected itself. So at this point, our soldering is done. I'm gonna find a 30 amp fuse and drop it in, but for the most part, there we go. And I'm just gonna spray a little bit of isopropyl on here. Clean those up. There we go. So in is the input from the power supply. Out is the output to your radio or whatever load that you want to use. And just put in the 30 amp fuse. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel this off, because this is going to go here, and then this one's going to go on the bottom, and then we're going to put this together real quick, and then we're going to come back. The hard part's done. Believe it or not, the hard part's done. So now I'm going to finish assembling this, put a fuse in it, and then we'll be complete. Give me a minute and we'll be right back. Alright, welcome back. Let's get into the final phase of the assembly. So what I did was I taken the acrylic plate with the cutout, I turned it upside down, inserted the screws, inserted the longer ones through. So simply flip that over, those in there. Now it looks like with the basic kit, it's just going to be that basic. Alright, so we got that there. We're going to put these here. Be okay that it's not lined up all the way. Be okay with that. Okay, insert the next acrylic plate. Nylon lock nuts. Get them on there. Not sure exactly what size they are, but just get them on there. Okay, now grab a screwdriver. I didn't have one readily available, so but now we got one. And now let's flip it over. Oh, there goes one of the nuts. That's okay. And we'll just Ooh, that is not going to go without putting a wrench on the other side. So stand by. We're going to get a wrench and we'll be right back. All right. So what you're going to need to finish this is a Phillips and a 5/8 wrench. Now, don't get too crazy and go Gorilla, especially if you're using a power driver, because then you're going to probably crack the acrylic. Now I'm using a 5/8. I found this to be closer to about 9 millimeters. And, you know, they don't have to be super tight. I mean, you're not bouncing around, vibrating it or anything. But just snug them up, because, I mean, this acrylic, if you Gorilla it, I promise you it'll crack. Just get it snug. The nylon lock washers will keep it from coming apart. There you go. This, you know what? It's still a little loose. You wonder why. Get it all the way on this side. So. Alright. And like I said, just snug these up. Didn't have a 9 millimeter. Well, I got a 9 millimeter, but not in wrench. I actually have it in firearm. And yeah, that's not what we need. Snug. Yeah, still got some loose. That's tight, loose, tight. Okay, so this is going to be our final one. Just tighten this up. Alright. Hey, we got no shake, rattling, or rolling. Alright, so now that this is assembled, yeah, it looks really good. Nothing's popping out. Perfect. We're going to come down here to where it says it will trip and put a short circuit across the input fuse if the power source voltage exceeds 15 or 16 volts. Depends on selection. Its primary purpose is to prevent the radio or other electronic load from ever seeing excessive voltage. So when the fuse has been blown, the red fault LED D1 next to the fuse holder right here will illuminate. If no load or very small load is connected, the red fault and the green output LED will both light. Pretty self-explanatory there. Now what it says, the maximum allowable fuse is 30 amps. And he says, you know, always use a quality fuse. You should always use a quality fuse. They're fuses. You know, they're not really that expensive. But Eaton Bussman little fuse or something similar to that. It can handle approximately 15 amps continuous current. For higher currents up to 30 amps, you must operate at 50% duty cycle or less, and no more than 30 seconds continuous at 30 amps. He also goes on to say it should be adequate for operating single sideband FT8CW with typical 100-watt radios. For data modes with long transmission times, such as SSTV and RTTY or RTTY, with lengthy text, you will need to reduce your output power to approximately 50 watts or less. Your power source must be able to deliver at least 2 times more current than whatever fuse rating you choose. With that being said, I have an Astron 50 amp power supply, so 25 amp fuse, what I would need. If your power source delivers less current, the fuse might not trip reliably. If your power source cannot deliver sufficient current to blow the fuse, the minibar can overheat and will be damaged. So 50 amp power supply tells me 30 amp fuse. Now this was the full kit, and it came with these two Anderson power pole connectors made, so all you had to do was solder it in. It came with a fuse holder, and it came in with the jumper and the little head to solder to the board. Now we're done here. Our next one is we're going to go through this, but the basic one, and I will show you what you could use to make a fuse holder. And you know, you could put this PCB in pretty much any case of your choice, but then we'll cover that. And then at some point we'll come back and we'll revisit this, because this doesn't necessarily have to go into your power supply, but it can be built as a standalone device as well. And you do not have the limitations with this PCB as you do with this PCB. With that being said, man, this is fantastic. This is great. I'm going to put a link to this in the description. It is well worth the money. If you're working portable and want to place this in between your battery and your power distribution block, this is fantastic. I think this is great. This was well thought out. It was very well thought out as far as simplicity in building it as a full kit. And for that, I'm going to say a plus, triple plus. Until our next video, ladies and gentlemen, this is Kilo 4 Sierra Delta Victor saying peace. Catch you a little bit further down the log. Have a great day. Enjoy.